If you like Storytime vibes, hit subscribe and let's dive in together.
He's lying, Mom. He's always hated me. That single sentence detonated like a bomb in my living room. Her voice, sweet, trembling, poisoned, cut straight through the air. And my wife, Alina, just stood there, staring at me like I was a stranger. Hi, my name is Max. And that was the night I learned that betrayal doesn't always come from your enemies. Sometimes it wears the face you kiss goodnight for years. Alina's daughter, Lily, looked so innocent, so fragile. She played her role perfectly, the trembling lip, the wet eyes, the performance of a lifetime. And Alina bought every second of it. Max, pack your things. I can't do this anymore. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because disbelief was the only thing keeping me standing. You're throwing me out. Because she said something? Alina didn't answer. She didn't even look at me. Her gaze was fixed on her daughter, full of the kind of love she used to have for me. That was when I understood. I was no longer her priority. I packed in silence. Every folded shirt felt like a piece of my life being buried. When the door slammed shut behind me, I stood outside with a suitcase in my hand, and the reflection of Lily's smirk in the window. It wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was execution, without trial. But here's the thing about life. It always keeps score. And that night, I made a silent promise. They would both learn what it feels like to lose everything they took for granted. Not through rage, not through violence, but through consequence. Because revenge isn't about shouting. It's about silence that echoes louder than screams. The first week felt like dying slowly. I slept on a friend's couch, surrounded by silence that screamed louder than any argument. Every night, I replayed it all. Her eyes, her voice, that door slamming shut. It's strange how quickly love can turn into something unrecognizable. One day, you're sharing breakfast. The next, you're the villain in a story you never wrote. But pain has a way of reshaping a man. By the second week, something inside me stopped breaking and started building. I opened the old box where I kept everything. Financial records, property deeds, receipts from years of shared effort that no one ever gave me credit for. Alina thought she could erase me with one order, one lie, but I wasn't gone. I was just quiet, and quiet men are dangerous. I spent my mornings in stillness, making lists, names, dates, documents. Every item on that list was a reminder. I had built just as much of that life as she had, maybe more. By the third week, I was no longer broken. I was calm, focused, sharp. When she finally came knocking on my friend's door, guilt smeared across her face like cheap perfume, I didn't flinch. Max, she said softly, we both need to reflect. Maybe it's time you apologize and come home. Apologize for being betrayed, for being thrown out of my own house. I smiled, slow, deliberate. I did reflect, I said, handing her an envelope. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Divorce papers. Her eyes widened, her breath hitched. For the first time, she was the one left out in the cold. She stammered, Max, this is ridiculous. We can fix this. But I wasn't the man who begged anymore. I was the man who rebuilt himself out of their lies. And that silence was my first taste of victory. When she left that day, clutching the divorce papers like they were burning her hands, I felt nothing. No anger, no grief, just a strange, hollow calm. The version of me who begged for her love had died the moment she believed a lie over the man who built her world. The new me didn't seek closure. He sought balance. And balance meant consequences. I started meeting with an old friend, a lawyer who had seen this kind of betrayal before. He didn't need convincing. You've got the evidence? He asked. I nodded and placed a thick folder on his desk. Every receipt, every signature, every transfer. Proof that I wasn't just her husband. I was her silent partner. We went through it line by line. The house, the business, the joint accounts. Half of everything bore my name. Legally, undeniably. She thought she could throw me out and keep the empire we built, but she'd forgotten the quiet man who handled every contract, every tax, every hidden detail she never cared to read. For weeks, I moved like a ghost. No outbursts, no posts, no pleas, just action. When she tried to call, I didn't answer. When she texted, I left her on read. Every unanswered ring was a reminder. She had forfeited the right to my voice. Then came the day of the first summons. The court papers were delivered to her doorstep, neat and official. Her perfect morning shattered in seconds. I imagined her sitting there, reading the words that turned her confidence into panic. For her, divorce had been simple. Throw me out, watch me crawl back, offer forgiveness when I was desperate enough. But I wasn't crawling anymore. I was climbing. 2 days later, I saw them outside the courthouse. Alina looked like she hadn't slept in days. Eyes red, hands shaking. "Max, please," she said, voice cracking. "You don't have to do this. Think about everything we built." I looked her straight in the eye. "Exactly. We built it. Not you, not her. And I'm taking what I earned." Her daughter stood beside her, arms crossed, venom dripping from every word. "You're just greedy. You never loved her. You only cared about the money." I almost laughed. "Funny," I said quietly. "I'm not the one who lied to destroy a marriage." She lunged forward, rage twisting her face, but Alina grabbed her arm. "Stop," she hissed. "You're making it worse." And that's when I saw it. The first crack. The perfect mother-daughter alliance that once destroyed me was beginning to fracture. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need revenge that screamed. All I had to do was stand there, calm, unshaken, while they fell apart under their own weight. That was the moment I realized something powerful. The best revenge isn't making them suffer. It's making them watch you rise while everything they built on lies collapses into dust. The first court hearing felt like walking into a war zone dressed in silence. Alina sat across from me, flawless makeup covering the exhaustion she couldn't hide. Her daughter Lily sat behind her, chin raised, eyes filled with hatred. I didn't flinch, because this time, I wasn't the man being accused. I was the man holding the evidence. When my lawyer spoke, the room shifted. Line by line, he dismantled the fantasy they had built, the illusion that I was disposable, replaceable, irrelevant. "Mr. Carter," the judge said, "you're claiming financial ownership of half her business?" "Yes, Your Honor," my lawyer replied calmly. "Here are the signed agreements, dated transactions, and proof of initial capital investment, all in his name." I watched as the color drained from Alina's face. Her lips parted, searching for the words that wouldn't come. The courtroom that once felt like her sanctuary now turned into a mirror, reflecting every lie. Lily shifted uncomfortably in her chair, glaring at me like she could burn a hole through my chest. She whispered something into her mother's ear, but Alina ignored her. For the first time, she wasn't sure whose voice to trust anymore. Then came the cross-examination. My lawyer asked, "Mrs. Carter, did you or did you not remove your husband from the marital home without any proof of wrongdoing?" The room fell silent. Her eyes darted toward Lily, looking for help. But the girl's confidence cracked. The judge noticed. "Mrs. Carter," he pressed, "answer the question." Her voice faltered. I thought, "You thought," my lawyer interrupted gently. "Based on your daughter's statement?" She nodded weakly. There it was. The truth, laid bare. Her entire case collapsing under the weight of her own blindness. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply sat there, hands folded, while justice spoke louder than vengeance ever could. After the session ended, I walked out into the crisp air outside the courthouse. The sun felt different, sharper, cleaner. Behind me, I heard footsteps. "Think you've won?" Lily's voice cut through the crowd. She stood there, trembling with rage, her words shaking more than her hands. "You destroyed her," she hissed. "My mom will never forgive you." I turned to face her, calm as ice. "She doesn't have to forgive me," I said. But one day she'll realize who truly destroyed her marriage. And it wasn't me. For the first time, her face broke. No smirk, no defiance, just the faintest flicker of doubt. As I walked away, I could feel the weight shifting, their alliance cracking beyond repair. Whispers followed them now, friends questioning their story, business partners stepping back, their perfect image, unraveling thread by thread. That night I stood by my apartment window, city lights flickering below, and for the first time I allowed myself a smile. Not out of cruelty, but relief. Because revenge wasn't about their pain. It was about reclaiming my truth. And yet, I knew this was only the beginning. The storm wasn't over. It had just changed direction, and now they were standing in its path. Weeks passed after that first hearing, and like a domino line tipping one piece at a time, their world began to crumble. I didn't have to do anything. Rumors did the work for me. Business partners started asking questions, clients hesitated, friends stopped visiting. The once perfect mother-daughter duo, always so smug, so untouchable, were now surrounded by silence they couldn't explain. Then came the second court session. This time, Alina's mask didn't even bother to show up. She looked smaller, weaker. Her lawyer spoke fast, desperate, drowning in paperwork and panic. When the judge ruled in my favor, confirming my half ownership of all assets, and acknowledging my financial role in her company, I didn't cheer. I just exhaled. Her face turned pale, like the oxygen had been pulled from the room. Lily slammed the courtroom door and stormed out mid-hearing, shouting something about injustice and betrayal. Justice, betrayal. Funny words, when spoken by the ones who started it all. That night, Alina sent me a message. Short, broken. Max, please, we can fix this. Let's talk. No lawyers, just us. I stared at it for a long time, my reflection glowing faintly in the screen. Once I would have answered immediately. Now I just let the message fade into digital dust. Because I finally understood. Closure isn't given. It's taken. My final move wasn't about money. It was about memory. With my lawyer's help, I transferred my share of the business into a scholarship fund for women who had been abandoned, silenced, or betrayed. Every dollar that left her hands became something beautiful she could never touch. When Alina found out, her rage was volcanic. Friends told me she screamed at Lily, blaming her for pushing me too far. Lily screamed back, accusing her mother of weakness, of ruining everything. Their alliance, that toxic bond that had destroyed me, was now ash. And I didn't even have to lift a finger. Weeks later, I heard she sold the house, the one I once turned into a home, just to cover legal fees. The business began to falter without my steady hand. And Lily? She moved out, leaving Alina alone in a small apartment with fading pride and unpaid bills. But I didn't watch from bitterness. I watched from distance, because revenge isn't about destruction, it's about transformation. That night, standing on the balcony of my new place, I held the divorce decree in one hand and a glass of whiskey in the other. The city hummed below me, alive and endless. And I realized something. I hadn't just won. I had outgrown the war. When I finally boxed the last relics of that old life, the ring, the house keys, the photographs, I took them to the river. I watched the water carry them away under the glow of streetlights and whispered, "Thank you for the lesson." Because the truest revenge was never their suffering. It was my freedom, my peace, my ability to live a bigger story than the one they tried to write for me. Months have passed since the final hearing. The war's over, not because one side surrendered, but because I stopped fighting battles that no longer mattered. Sometimes peace doesn't arrive with celebration. It comes quietly, like sunlight slipping through broken blinds. You don't notice it at first, until one morning you breathe easier and realize you're free. I built new habits out of old pain. Early runs by the river, coffee that didn't taste like compromise, books I used to love but never had time to read. Life, piece by piece, began to belong to me again. And then one day, I received an email from the scholarship fund's first recipient. A young woman wrote, "Your help gave me a second chance at life. I'll make sure it matters." I read it twice. Then I smiled. That's when I understood. Revenge had already transformed. It wasn't about Alina or Lily anymore. It wasn't about winning. It was about becoming. I heard later that Alina's business finally closed down. Her pride couldn't sustain what honesty once did. And Lily, she disappeared from the gossip, from the photos, from the noise. Maybe they were rebuilding. Maybe they were blaming. But neither of those stories belonged to me anymore. I had already turned the page. One night, I stood by the river again, the same place I'd thrown away my past. The air was cool, the water dark but alive. And for the first time, I didn't think about loss or revenge. I thought about possibility, because the truth is, revenge only fills the silence for a while. But peace teaches you how to listen again. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I forgive you. Not for you, but for me." And in that moment, I realized something beautiful. Freedom has a sound. It isn't loud. It doesn't roar like victory. It's the sound of your own heartbeat, steady, unchained, alive. Because in the end, the truest revenge is not to watch them fall. It's to rise, quietly, completely, and never look back.